Thanks for tuning in to the Drive On podcast, where we're focused on giving hope and strength to the entire military community. Whether you're a veteran, active duty, guard, reserve, or a family member, this podcast will share inspirational stories and resources that are useful to you. I'm your host, Scott DeLuzio, and now let's get on with the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Drive On podcast. Today, my guest is Kelsi Sheren. Kelsi is, I believe, the first Canadian veteran that we've had on this show. So thanks for joining us from our neighbors up north. She's the CEO of Brass and Unity and a strong supporter of military and mental health programs. So we're going to be chatting about her time in the military, what caused her to transition out, and how she's dealt with her own PTSD and TBI after getting out. So welcome to the show, Kelsi. I'm glad to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm sorry how I sound for your listeners.
Oh, that's okay. I know before we started recording, you mentioned you're kind of battling a little cold, but you're a trooper and you're still showing up for it. So I'm really happy that you are here and that we're getting this on the recording.
Yeah, no worries. I hate when people cancel on me and have to move things. I get life happens, but I always try my best to show up. If I set a time, I will do everything I can. So I stayed home all day until this and then decided I could come in for it. So I'm glad to be here.
I appreciate that so much. It's great having you. And I know we kind of went back and forth trying to figure out a time to get you on here. And it's awesome that you're here. So for the listeners who might not be familiar with you and your story, could you just tell us a little bit about your deployment to Afghanistan, kind of your background with that?
Yeah. So I was a M777 artillery gunner on the howitzers. We ran the 155s in Afghanistan. I'm from the Canadian Artillery, so the Royal Canadian Horse Artillery, the 5 RELC Regiment of Vaquets Quebec is who I deployed with. I did 4 years in the military, very short stint, and I end up being medically released in 2011 with a diagnosis of a post-traumatic stress disorder, and I was medically retired then. So I did everything pretty quick, like a lot of people do. I mean, if there's courses going, you can bang out all the training really fast. And the fact that we were in an active war and we were deployed and all of those things meant that we were doing rotations in Canada. And so we knew that we would be deploying fairly quickly after joining. That was the discussion we kind of had when we came and when we got in. And so I was aware. And so I did all of my training pretty quick in 2008. And then I was posted at the end of 2008 to Vaquets, which was my regiment that we ended up deploying with in April of 2009 to Afghanistan.
Cool. And so when you were there in Afghanistan, obviously you got released from the military with a diagnosis of PTSD. What was that deployment like for you? How did that develop for you? How did that take place in Afghanistan?
Yeah, so for me, it was fairly simple. I was on an operation with another country, and things just went sideways. I was on a FOB when we first got there. I went to FOB Ramrod. Our artillery unit was sent out there to support some Americans, and the rest of the regiment was sent to some other FOBs to support some Canadians and other countries that are in those areas. And so ours was very specific. So we got to go and hang out at FOB Ramrod, which was great. And we did a lot of firing there for the Americans. But at the time, they were taking other women from other countries in the military and using them as, I think you guys call them CSTs, is what I've learned. Yeah. So culture support teams. I was just told I was being borrowed. So whatever. So I went with, end up being the British military out on operation, and some stuff just kind of went really sideways, and it was a little rough, and it ended up causing a lot of issues for me and a lot of damage done very quickly in a very short period of time. And then I finished my deployment 2 weeks short of, I think, the rest of my regiment, 2 or 3 weeks short of the rest of the regiment. I was sent home, and then they wanted to retrain me. So they tried to retrain me, and that didn't go well either. And finally, they just said, you're not going to get better from this, and like enough for us to keep you in the military. And so they decided that at that point that it would be a medical retirement. I think it's a 3B med retirement in Canada. And I've been out since May 23rd, 2011. I was supposed to go on like many in our regiment, we would have deployed again in a very 6 to 9 month period after that, just based on the amount of rotations the country was doing at the time. But that just, I guess, wasn't in the works or in the plan for me. So that's okay.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, these things happen, and you're dealt the you're dealt the cards that you are dealt, and you kind of have to play them the way that they fall, right? It's actually interesting that the date that you said that you have been out since, because my discharge date was June 11th of that year. So it was just like a week or two later or something like that. So it kind of
2011.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. So, I thought you were going to say 2009. I was like, oh, that was a really bad day for me. A lot of people. I was like, that's too close, man.
No.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So it's a similar time frame. So we've both been out for about the same amount of time. When you got back home, so they diagnosed you with PTSD. They kind of figured it's not going to get much better.
Yeah. They diagnosed me when I was in Afghanistan. So that operation was bad enough that I started going to the doctor there. They started to see signs and they sent me to the doctor there. And then they gave me an acute diagnosis there. And then they started medicating me while I was in country. So that was a great time.
It's actually, in a way, it's kind of good that they caught that early enough, while you're still there. So that way they're not throwing you back into stuff that you probably weren't ready for at that point.
Well, I think that there's a way to look at that. I think maybe for them, maybe that felt like the right decision. For me, it did not. It felt like I should have been able to finish out my deployment because I was still effective and I was doing my job. And until they medicated me. Once they medicated me, that was just sketchy. The fact that they had me on a machine gun doing like an OP post tower, like on the tower, like that's sketchy. Nobody should be doing that when you're that drugged out of your mind. And let alone that is my sergeants above me had no idea I was on those medication. I actually was on the phone with him, not yesterday, the day before. We were just chatting, catching up. And he always brings it up to me because he feels so bad about how badly the situation was handled. He goes, I had no idea. I had no idea you were on that much medication. I had no idea. None of us had a clue as to what went wrong or what happened. We just knew you just stopped talking. And when that happened, there was a problem. And then some things started. Yeah, I know, it's fine. And then some things kind of started happening and they started to realize like it just wasn't, there was something really, really wrong here. But the problem is, and he talks about it now, Sarge talks about it now. I mean, he's an officer now, so I refuse to call him by his rank. But Sarge, he didn't understand, and he knows now that he didn't understand then. It was because right around that time, like 2007, 2008, 2009, vets were coming home from Afghanistan back to Canada, and no one really was paying attention to what PTSD was or PTS, or you were starting to see it. Like people had it from early on in the war, but people weren't catching it, or people weren't aware of it, or knew what to really look for. Is it even something real, or is it, a stress thing that they just figured if they give them rest, it'll be fine. Like they weren't conscious of it. And so he even says to me, like, now when I look back, he's like, I had no idea what to do with you. I had no clue what to do with you. I wasn't trained to know what to do with that because it's not something I learned. So when I'm seeing one of my members struggling, and I don't know why, I know that she went out, he understood some of the stuff that happened. I had told him, and he had heard through others about it. And he knew that there was something wrong, but he just didn't know how to approach it. And the problem is when I was in country, they should never have medicated me in country. They should have sent me out of country as medicated as I was. It just wasn't a good situation. And that's how you could tell that the ranks above were just inept, and they did not know how to handle somebody that was struggling mentally while they were in country. So they just kept them there and did like monotonous tasks and things like that, which just ends up making it worse. So I don't know that it's good that they caught it, because frankly, I would have rather, there's hindsight's 2020. And me personally, I still felt that way, and I still do. Like I I had a hard time transitioning out because I felt I was ripped away from a situation I wasn't ready to be taken away from. There was no closure put to that. And I think that's a huge significant thing to look at when people are leaving Afghanistan, if they're injured or things like that. Like some people have that feeling of like, I just want to go back there, or part of me is still there. I hear that a lot from vets, like part of me is still there. And that's okay. I know what that feels like. I can understand. So when I was taken out the way I was, it just wasn't good. Nobody really knew how to handle it. And that was definitely like the unfortunate part about having like the diagnosis in country and all of those things. I know maybe they would argue, no, it's better we medicated you. You could have been worse. Yeah. I don't know about that.
Yeah. I mean, and again, like you said, hindsight is 2020, but
right.
you know, they were probably just doing what they thought was the best at the time. They may not have known, like, because like you said, we didn't really know a whole lot of what to look out for and how to deal with that kind of stuff. Right. You know?
Yeah. And they, I was actually getting in a lot of trouble because I was like having like outbursts, like angrily outbursts towards superior officers. So they weren't handling it from a medical standpoint. They were writing me up like legit, like hits against my record and being like saying that she's being insubordinate, like insubordination charges. Like they were trying to have me charged on things. So they had no fucking clue how to handle mental health. And it's obvious because at the time I would go and talk to other Americans on the FOB and be like, I'm struggling with this. Like, I don't, because these guys were going in and outside the wire constantly. And my guys hadn't left inside the FOB. So they weren't experiencing the same things that I had a very short period of time outside the wire, but when I did, it wasn't good. And it really fucked me up and a lot of people. And so those guys that were infantry that were going in and out and seeing shit all the time, I could talk to them, but then I would get in trouble for talking to them, telling them how they were handling it. And then I'd be like, I just got written up for this thing. And then another Canadian would rat on me to one of the officers being like, she's showing like confidential documents to the Americans, when really it was them just saying like, she's being insubordinate, when I was literally losing my fucking mind. So they didn't know how to handle it. And thankfully, I'm hopeful that they're starting to handle it better now. But I know plenty of people that went through those situations, like sexual assault things while they were over there, and it was never dealt with, and it's still never been dealt with. So I sometimes have a hard time believing that they were trying because it was just such a piss poor fucking job of trying.
Right. Yeah. And you know what though, it's an unfortunate situation, but maybe a positive way to look at it is maybe some of the mistakes that were made, and maybe they weren't trying, but hopefully now they're trying better and they're doing better for the troops that are out there now.
They're trying.
They're trying. Whether they're doing a good job or not, I don't know. But
I think it comes down
I'm
to
not there anymore.
Well, fair enough. I think it also comes down to who your officers are, right? Who your superiors are and how educated they are. So that's always a telltale thing, is like, if your staff knows when it comes to mental health and understands it, that's going to be a different thing for the rest of the troops underneath them. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I also know kind of what you're talking about getting ripped out from that feeling of being ripped out from Afghanistan and leaving the way you did. My brother deployed the same time I was in Afghanistan. He was killed in action, and I was sent home like the day after he was killed. I started my journey home, and then a couple weeks later, I'm watching on the news as the area where the base that I was stationed out of is on CNN, and I'm like, shit, I wish I was there. Not that I wish I didn't want to be there. Like I knew in my head I wasn't going to be in my right state of mind to be there, but I was like, I know all of the guys who are at that base right now. I need to be there, and 100%. it was just a terrible feeling.
It is. Yeah.
But it is what it is. And you kind of have to just deal with it and move on. Right. So after you got home, what treatments were available to you? I know some of the treatments that are available here in the US, but I don't know too much about the Canadian VA and their system up there. What treatments were available to you for the PTSD and eventually you were diagnosed with a TBI, right?
Yeah. So they are just as bad as you guys. RVA is just as great and awesome as the United States VA. So don't worry, you're not the only ones. Yeah, they're ruthless, right? So for me, I came home, and then the military, and I was sent home to my regiment, and my RSM handed me an envelope and was like, "You're being reposted. You're going to Ottawa, and you're to report to the hospital." So I did. I reported to the hospital, but then after that, no one from the military called me for like a good 6 months.
Oh, wow.
I found out that, like I said, after talking to my sergeant since, because him and I just reconnected a couple of years ago, he said, we had no idea where you went. We were not told anything about where you were posted. All we were told is to gather up your stuff. You were gone. And that was the end of it. So we had no idea. And so I always wondered to myself, like, why didn't anyone reach out to me or anything like that? And he's like, we didn't know where you were. And so I said, that makes a lot more sense, obviously. So in Ottawa, I would go to the doctor, and the only treatments that were available at the time were traditional talk therapy, EMDR, and medication. Okay. So that was it. And now, obviously, being 2022, there's the gamut, the healing modalities are drastically different than they were in 2009. But for me, I went through a handful of doctors. I went through, I went at the height, I was on 10 different pharmaceutical drugs. And they wanted to retrain me after 6 months. They kind of reached out and said, we have to start thinking about a position for you, and because you can't go back to artillery. So where can you go? What can you do? What can we remuster you to? And, the only other thing I wanted to do in the military was infantry. So they weren't going to do that. So they said, we're going to put you at a range, and we're going to just have you go 2 half days a week. And then that'll give you time to go to your doctor's appointments and do all those things. So I did that. But really what that did was distance me further from the military and the people I needed support from at the time. I felt very segregated off into like this, almost like sick bay, or like where you guys go when you're on PAT, when someone breaks a leg and you're just sitting there in a room, you're like, I feel useless. So I did that. I did that 2 half days a week. That was interesting, getting reintegrated into coming back to Canada. That was a really big struggle for me. Certain things just really hit me. And some of my triggers were really prevalent in the area, the way some people dress. So it was a little bit difficult. There was a situation where I attacked a family at a Walmart. Like I wasn't well, man. And I did a really good job of masking it and faking it and, looking like everything was fine, but really I was crumbling inside. So I don't know at the time, again, if they would have had better healing modalities, if I would have been in a different path, but I know at the time it was medication, talk therapy, and EMDR. And obviously they wanted you to work out and stuff because you're still in. And so obviously physical fitness it improves mental health significantly. So that was really key to keeping me well and keeping me healthy. But that was pretty much it at the time. Yeah.
You eventually found like a art therapy, right? Through this, right?
Well, so it was just in conversation with my doctor. So they did all of this for about 1.5 years, and then they told me I was going to be released from the military, whether I kind of liked it or not. The retraining wasn't going fast enough. I wasn't getting better fast enough. And so they said, we're gonna med release you. And I said, hey, I'd like to be posted out where my at the time my boyfriend was in British Columbia. So if there's a posting out there I can take, I'm fine to go out there and continue and keep trying to work at this, because I didn't want to get out. I wanted to be a career military member. That was what I had hoped for once I joined. And I ended up coming out to British Columbia. And that's when I got my long-term doctor that I still have now, Doc Passy. And he's been with me since 2011, or just before, I think end of 2010. He's been with me all the way to now. And through conversation, weekly treatment sessions and stuff like that, we got to a point where he's like suggested something along the lines, doing something with my hands. And so for me, just, you got to understand, it was a success to like get out of bed every day in a row. Like that was a big step, big girl steps, So I started, he suggested art therapy. So I decided I was going to, for whatever the reason, the rhyme or reason, I was going to start a jewelry company. At the time, I just needed, it was just a jewelry thing I was building on the kitchen table. I wasn't trying to make it a company. It rolled into a company kind of naturally on its own. And I just started with a pipe cutter, like a handheld pipe cutter, a drill and a hammer, and then a block of wood, and just destroyed my kitchen table. And I would build these bracelets, which I called Molly beads. And the company at the time was called Her Wearables. And all I know is it was making me feel better. And I was having days where I didn't feel suicidal. And I was having days where I felt like I was alive. And that was weird. And so I kept doing it. And then my husband suggested, like, hey, I think you could do something with this. And so I took it around to a few stores, and they purchased it. And I really wanted to help the community, but I didn't know how to do that, because at that time, you know, there was nonprofits, but I didn't know how to run a nonprofit. I didn't know what that would look like. I didn't know really where to go. I just knew I wanted to help. And I figured, well, if I can take this product and then have people buy it, then I can donate money, and then I can donate to the nonprofits, and they know what they're doing with it. So we did that, and it rolled into, in 2016, it rolled into Brass and Unity, and we are incorporated as that. And we've been Brass and Unity ever since. And we're on our sixth year in business now. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love how it turned into that. You know, it started off just as you on your kitchen table, banging away, making stuff that just made you feel better. Right. It was probably something you just kind of got lost in as you were doing it, and didn't even realize the benefits of it until afterwards. And you're like, oh my God, what is this weird, like, good feeling that's coming over me? Right.
Yeah. And it wasn't even that it was a good feeling necessarily. It's just that it didn't hurt to like sit up, and it wasn't like painful to breathe. And it wasn't like everything didn't take a monumentous amount of effort. All of a sudden I was just sitting there peacefully, and my mind wasn't racing, and my thoughts weren't trailing off and going crazy. So that was a huge thing for me, was just being able to do that and be successful at that, and work towards, you know, strengthening my mind a little bit and getting better with the other treatment I was doing. And then, you know, that led into other different types of healing modalities. So that all it all started there for sure, which is, it's great to see art therapy being utilized more, and more veterans and first responders realizing that there's a creative part of human beings, and that when you activate that, it can really help your mind. It can help ease, you know, and bring the noise down. And focusing on a task like that, those are the things that sometimes get you out of your head, which is what we all need.
And the thing that I love about it too is that you figured out a way to not only use the art therapy for your own benefit to help your own mental health, but also, if you were to just be doing this for the sake of doing it, you'd be having boxes and boxes piled up of jewelry that was going nowhere, right? But you turned it into something that now you can get them out the door and have some money coming in that you can now donate to some of these charities, right?
Right, exactly. And the whole goal has always been to help other people, because there's no need to suffer on your own, for God's sakes. I mean, the world is hard enough. The last thing we need to do is to be doing this on our own. And so I wanted to also create a community. And I thought, you know, something as simple as wearing a bullet could create a community, because if people understood why I was doing it, they could understand and see themselves in something and realize that, oh my God, there's other people all across the world that have the same issues, that for some reason we tell ourselves we're the only ones that go through it, but we're not. We're human beings. We're no different than anyone else. And when we're able to see ourselves in everyone else, then we can all kind of be good to one another. And so if I could create this community, it could be more than just a jewelry company. And we started it back when into that, you know, the original of 2015, when, you know, the mental health conversation was just starting. And it wasn't a thing yet. It was very taboo. And I started screaming very early on, you know, vets are struggling and we need to do something about it. And people are doing that now. And it's a beautiful thing to see people from within their own community helping their own community. because that bleeds into the civilian population. It bleeds into everyone else. It bleeds into the wives of the military or the husbands of the military, bleeds into the children of the military. And that creates a community, something they can wear, something, a touch piece that they can feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves. And that's what's really special to me about it.
Yeah. And when that community gets the support that it needs, it gets stronger, it gets more resilient, and it's able to impact their own local communities as well. And so it has this exponential effect. So not only is it just the military community that's being helped through programs like this, it's also their local communities as these people are getting back into society, getting the help that they need. They're able to now have a positive impact as well. So I mean, it's a big exponential impact that you end up having, right?
And sometimes it's tedious, right? When you're starting something or you're working on something like that, you wonder, how am I going to get it out of my town? How am I going to get it out of my city? How am I going to get it out of my state? How am I going to get it into the country? Like, how does that work? It's like the best way to affect change is to do it locally and do it heavily and do it as much as you can. And for me, where I live, there's not a ton of vets. So we don't have the same type of community. I mean, we have in certain pockets of Canada, but we're so widespread as a nation with the amount of military members. We're all spread out really far apart. And so, you know, when you go down to Texas, you can drive any direction every half an hour and see a Black Rifle Coffee. You know, if you go in there, that it's going to be your like-minded people, or more than likely people in your community, or you having a brother who served. You guys, it seems like you guys are all 1 degree separation of a military member from some direction in the United States. In Canada, it feels a little more spread out. And so I wanted that community for me. Selfishly, I wanted a community again. I wanted the brotherhood, and I wanted that sisterhood. And I wanted everyone that I had before, where I woke up, I went to work the day, and it was just all my homies or all the people I just liked to hang around. And we blew things up for a living. Like, I miss that. I miss that community, and I wanted it too. So I was hopeful that I could not only create it for myself and for the people I wanted to surround myself with, but allow that to grow naturally outside of itself. And I think at the end of the day, when you try to affect change, you got to start small. And those small ripples, they go out. And people find it on their own, and people connect with it differently or for different reasons on their own. And you might not know what those are going to be. It might shock the hell out of you. Oh, my so-and-so and so-and-so's brother, blah, blah, blah. Or, hey, my aunt or my uncle are here. It's like, I hear these crazy stories all the time. And it's such a beautiful thing, because it doesn't even have to be military. We're about mental health. We're about helping everyone outside of mental health. We don't want anyone to struggle. And in the past 2 years, we're the most divided we've ever been across the board. And so if we could all just realize for a second that we're all just human beings going through a human experience, and we're all affected by it differently, we're going to react differently to things. So if you can give a unifier or something that they can all connect to, like, hey, our brains all are hurting right now. It sucks. It's the reality. But here, if you wear part of our piece, or you join our mental health group on our Signal, or you come on our lives, or you do whatever, we're all just here to just help each other. We just want each other to feel supported and loved, and like somebody would miss you if you weren't here, right? That's the thing. Affecting change is not easy, but I've built over the past 6 years, I've done my best to put every day forward to helping someone else, and doing that just through a very abstract, different way. You know, everyone has their way of doing it. Black Rifle does it with coffee. They help charities. We do it with jewelry, with bullets. Combat Flip-Flops puts bullets in shoes. I mean, we all do it in a different way, but we're all doing it nonetheless.
Right. And I think that's the thing, is someone has to do something. And that's what you're doing. You're doing something. And like anything else, you try something, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work. Right. In this case, it seems like it's working. So, you know, good on you for it. Right. And it's that's a positive thing. But if it didn't, I'm sure you wouldn't just be sitting there like, oh, well, let's just throw in the towel. I'm done. You'd find something else that would work. You keep trying until something worked. Right. Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I don't do this to make money. I don't even take a paycheck, for Christ's sakes. I don't do this for that. I do it because I want to help people, and I don't want anyone to kill themselves anymore. And I want people to realize that they should be here on this planet, and that it's not their time to go, and that they, you you should want to help people right now. When you see the world struggling the way it is, you should want to help people. There's just so much hurt right now. There's no need to just feel alone. And
Right.
more than ever, I don't want to see people suffering anymore. I don't think anybody does.
No. And I mean, that's exactly why I started this podcast. I was lucky enough that the company I was in, we didn't lose any soldiers overseas in Afghanistan, but when we came home, we started losing them here to suicide. And I was like, we came from a country where people actually wanted to kill you, and you came home okay, and you came back to a country where people actually wanted you to thrive and do well, and now we're losing you. That didn't make sense to me. And so I wanted to do whatever I could and reach as many people as I could by offering words of wisdom or inspirational stories, or even other resources that are out there, different types of therapies, because God knows enough people have gone to the VA and gotten frustrated and just didn't want to continue doing anything. So, there's other stuff out there. Try again, just like with this jewelry business, with the coffee business, with the, the combat flip-flops, with all those things, try something. If it doesn't work for you, try something else. Keep trying. Just don't quit.
Try.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's the key, right?
Yeah. And so eventually you were diagnosed with the TBI, right? When did that diagnosis come up, and what kind of treatment was available for that?
Yeah, so I haven't even been rated yet for it. I got diagnosed when I went down to do some treatment. There was what happened was, the reason it all got sparked is what we now know is that small arms and things like artillery and mortars, they cause a concussive blast every time you fire one. And so I was an artillery gunner and a mortarman and a shot small arms fire and everything else. And those things all have repetition hits to the head. And I was going down a slow decline for the past 10 years. Like, the PTSD was one thing, and we knew what I was dealing with that and ways to cope with it daily. And slowly I was getting better with that. There, obviously there's going to be some things for me personally that are like lifelong issues, but there's going to be some that used to be crippling and now they're nothing. So it really just depends. And so for me, I started to have more of a slow decline in terms of things like my memory was getting really bad. My inability, my gut health was an issue. I was having sensitivities to everything. Light sensitivity was like getting out of control. If it was sunny and I had a pair of my sunglasses on, no joke, I would still be pouring tears. It was just so aggressive. I was starting to get these bouts of vertigo. I had a chronic migraine all the time that I just thought was normal. Like, I just always had head pain. Those were just some of the symptoms, but those are things that I was kind of slowly progressing with since I got back, and didn't really think didn't think anything of it. And then really what happened was my husband started showing the same issues. And then one day last year, his whole body just shut off. It just shut the fuck off. We were just mid-conversation, watching a podcast. I was smoking a joint. And all of a sudden he goes, "Honey, I'm dying." He grabbed his chest and he dropped in the garage. And it was arguably one of the scariest moments of my life since Afghanistan, because I didn't know what to do and I didn't know how to help him. All I know is I was in my pajamas and I started having like the huge wave of adrenaline come. And I just started running in the house for keys and the phone and everything else. And I called 911 and they put us on hold. So I called my neighbor over and they helped get Brady to the car. And they stayed at the house while our son was there. And I got to the emergency room with him. And then they decided that because Brady had ingested cannabis, they weren't going to treat him properly. They deemed him a drug user on paperwork. So Brady was crashing. Oh, I've never seen anything like it. It was the weirdest thing. He literally went from like full conversation to nothing. And then right after that, even when he was conscious, he was in and out and he was gray and he was sweating profusely. I thought he was having a heart attack. I didn't think stroke because he was, conversation, but it was bad. And they were just absolutely horrendous at the hospital. And they ended up releasing him and just saying that, I don't even know what they said. I don't know that they even gave us a thing. They thought maybe it was blood sugar related, and we're like, his sugars were fine. And anyway, long and short, it took us a very long time. And only And I mean only because my husband is very research based. Like he'll research something to death. And he's very smart. And as he started to decline and not be able to get out of bed and not be able to do anything or tolerate anything, he started researching. And then we thought he was diabetic. Then we thought he had another issue. Then we thought it was this. Then we thought it was that, because the doctors had no answers. And then finally, we were sitting there one day and I was like, I wonder if it's your head, because he was a professional supercross racer. So this guy has hit his head more times than I can count and broken both femurs and all of the stuff. And so he started asking the doctor about getting an MRI and all these things. And so we did all of that. And finally, I made a call to a friend of mine. He was an Army Ranger, Ron O'Farrell. And I said, because I knew Ron had done this treatment program in Texas at the Resiliency Brain Health Center through Defenders of Freedom. And I watched him go through it. He did a whole, he kind of documented it on Instagram, and he was doing amazing. Symptoms and stuff he was having issues with were getting like better, like crazy better. So I called him and I actually left him a voice message, and I was bawling my eyes out. And I said, I need someone to help me because no one up here in Canada will. Nobody has a clue. And so Brady ended up going down to the Brain Resiliency Center with Doc G and everyone down there. And we found out Brady had a TBI. And that's what was happening. His hormones were bottoming out, and all of these things were happening. And what men don't understand, or are just finding out now, or aren't aware, when they have head injuries and as they age, their testosterone drops out. But when you have a head injury, it really bottoms out, and a lot of your hormones just woof, and it will shut your body down, like with stress and everything. It's really, really bad. So because of that, we went, oh, well, that's got to, maybe there's something to that with Kelsi. Maybe there's something to a lot of these issues that were progressively getting worse. Things were not getting better. They were getting worse. And the psychedelics had helped me a lot, probably 50 to 60%. It was like better after experiencing psychedelics from the PTS side. But there were some other things that were just not good. And so I went down, Defenders of Freedom sent me to the Brain Resiliency Center, and I did 2 weeks of intensive TBI treatment. And yeah, sure enough, got a TBI. So the VA now in Canada is just starting to get paperwork from me about this, because it's gone since 2011. So 12 years, 10, 11
Right.
years. And I wasn't rated for it. And I talked to my case manager. She said straight up, this is new. This is something new we're seeing in people. So before the diagnosis might have been PTS, but really it was probably both. So, the way of treating things obviously changes as you understand what's wrong with the body.
Right. And from what I understand, some of the symptoms of a TBI mimic some of the symptoms of post-traumatic stress as well. And so it could be hard to diagnose when you're having some of the same symptoms. But what did the treatment look like when you were down there? Like what was that treatment that you went through?
So I did a lot of different things, and I don't know the medical terms. I did an episode with Doc G, who runs the Brain Resiliency Center. I think it's episode 98 or 99 on my show on the Breast and Unity podcast, where we kind of broke it down, everything that they did to me and why they did it to me. And there was a lot of different things in terms of, you do a whole bunch of testing when you get there, and they're able to show you your test results and basically why your brain isn't working. And that's a fun conversation. Here's all your faults. And but they're like, here's how we're going to fix them. And so there's everything from eye movements, like saccades. So you do these, it's like this eye work, which is really, it sounds simple, and they use a little stick to do it with. But I'm telling you right now, I call it the death stick, because it is so intensive and it's so hard on the brain. And then they have one of those lovely chairs that looks like an astronaut chair, where they spin you upside down and do all these things. So what they're checking for things like that is me. I found out I have dysautonomia. So at a certain point, when you tip me backwards, my brain feels like it's flipping upside down. So that's why I had things like card sickness constantly, unless I'm driving, motion sickness, right? My brain is not regulating. And so you do things like that. You do a lot of different, have you ever seen those blaze pods, those in the gym, the pods you hit with the lights?
Yes.
So things like that, but coupled with I want you to say the alphabet, and I want you to say a food for every letter, and then you can hit the light, like just really intensive, slow, like work. And then sitting over with the metronome, the interactive metronome. It's a computer game you play with sensors on your hands and your feet, and you're listening to things. And a beep happens. And what it does is it helps you slow down your brain or speed it up. So depending on how your frontal lobe is processing things, it will help with that. My God, that is exhausting. My legs buckled at one point. It was so weirdly, it's all like sneaky, painful, good stuff. It doesn't make sense why they're doing it, but whatever they're doing, it's working. And just lots of things like that. They're really talented and smart individuals down there, and they're on the cutting edge of every different science. So there's our RTMS, which is like electromagnetic pulsation on your head, and it is the best feeling in the world. It takes your anxiety down like tenfold. I wish I had a machine in my house. Those types of things. And then I was having like a stroke response on my face from types of migraine. So the left side of my face was drooping. So stimulating nerves and getting the nerves and the neurons and your brain to start firing again. And when it starts happening, for me, it felt really painful at one point, and then all of a sudden it lifted, which was it was a wild experience, but it is definitely one that I can say is transformative. And it's terrifying to realize that I was living that long with that many symptoms, and realizing and thinking that was just normal, healthy behavior. When realistically, they always say to you, you don't know what good is. And I was like, how you feeling? I'm like, good. They're like, no.
Yeah. That's like, when a vet goes to the doctor and the doctor says, okay, what's your pain level? And it's, I don't know, the normal amount. Well, the normal amount is 0. Yeah. Like, but It's like, wait, really? No, I don't think so. No, it can't be 0.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. You must be in some type of pain all the time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's just normal, right? It's either your back or your knees or your head or your arms or whatever. It's something.
Right.
Yeah. So that is interesting that they have all those different types of treatments for, obviously a TBI is going to affect each individual a little bit differently. So like you said, either slowing down or speeding up or whatever the case may be. I also have heard of another treatment that has done some good work for TBIs, and it's the hyperbaric oxygen therapy.
Yeah,
is that
so
part of that too, or is that
they don't do it there, but they do recommend it. They also do they check your hormones levels and they check your panels, and they also balance you chemically. And that's a huge thing they do down there. That really helps with all of the training and treatment you're going to do. Then they send you home with a ton of homework to keep progressing and getting better. So there are other things they'll suggest. Like if you can do hyperbaric, they're going to suggest you do it because it's great. We're actually looking at getting a home one because my husband and I both need it. So it's, those things are not cheap sessions. So if you can get it covered, hyperbaric is definitely something that they suggest doing. There's a lot of little things they suggest doing. And I just scratched the surface of the different treatments they do there. But I know, my God, they are at the forefront. They're constantly, when I was there, they were signing up for another clinic to go to another thing, to learn another thing. Like they're constantly learning and changing their healing modalities to help as people come back and they start to see different symptoms. And dealing with men and women are very different, right? Because women have a different balance of inflammation halfway throughout the month and men don't. And so there's a lot of different things. They're very specific and individualized treatments. I wasn't doing the same stuff as one of the Army Rangers, Jason Belford. He was there doing. I didn't do some of the stuff he did. He didn't do some of the stuff I did. And it's because it's not what was needed. But hyperbaric definitely, really keeping on your fitness to those types of things is really important to keep everything moving. And then, like I said, they'll balance you chemically. So your vitamins and the things that you're supposed to be on, paying attention to that. Wearing blue light glasses after a certain period of time, or when you're on a screen. So the only time I don't wear them is when I'm doing a podcast. But always having a pair of, they're over there, blue light glasses, because that really affects the straining of the eyes, which is, wears you out, and it affects TBIs, those types of things. So there's tons of little things that they teach you when you go down there that you take home and you just keep bettering and working on. It's an interesting process, but it's definitely a game changer for sure.
Yeah, and all those little things like the blue light glasses and all those little things are things that add up over time. And if you're not
Right.
doing that kind of stuff over time, that's going to just make the matters worse. And so what you've learned and what you're able to take away from that is probably invaluable, and it's only going to help as you go forward, right?
Yeah. And you got to stay accountable, right? It's not a quick fix. This isn't like something, it's not like it's like anything else. You want to get good at it, you got to practice. And so you practice the things they teach you, you make sure you do it the way you're supposed to, and you pay attention to it. One of the best things they taught me that I use when I'm in the office all the time, and it sounds really silly, but it's a good take home for listeners, is if you're having an anxiety attack or you can feel yourself kind of spiking up or getting upset, things like that. One of the best ways to help slow that down is to gargle water really hard. And I'm saying like on repeat, you'll feel yourself come down from it, because what it does is it vibrates the vagal nerve, and that helps slow the fight or flight. It brings it down. So gargling water or humming or singing, because it vibrates, and the vibration is what affects it affects it in a massive way. So those are like seriously gargling water, singing, or vibrating right here. That makes massive difference.
All those things just sound like such simple little
I know
things, like almost like you're shitting me, like that it's that easy.
I know.
And then like if you go and do it, and I haven't been in that position where I've needed that type of treatment, thankfully, but then when people like yourself go and do that, it's like, oh my God, it was that simple all this time. I could have just done that.
Well, yeah, it's that certain things seem that simple, and then there's definitely like in combination with X, Y, and Z and medication, blah, blah, blah. So it's, there's definitely a lot more to it, but those are little simple things that help bring you down. It's like, because that was a thing for me. I would be standing there. I had a conversation with the founder, Donna Cranston. She came to see me at the clinic, and we were just talking about something, nothing controversial, just something that I was maybe irritated with. And I don't do it very much anymore. But I did, my whole body would just start to shake, like shake. And I couldn't make it stop. It was just normal for me. And she goes, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah." "Why?" And the doctor started on the corner of the eye. She's like, "All right, come sit down with me. You're not okay. Let's talk about what just happened there to your body." And it was a cortisol spike. And it was a big dump of cortisol. So that my body was reacting to it really aggressively. And so she started doing all these different treatments. But then when I left, she goes, "Listen, throughout it, you learn." And that's the thing. They don't just do things to you. They teach you while you're doing it, which helps significantly. That helps me wrap my brain around why is she making me hit these colored lights on the wall or tap my hands like this, like I'm crazy. Like what is the point of this? But the water thing in particular, it's super effective, and anybody can do it. It's gargling water, and it's not like and then be done. It's like gargle for a couple minutes, like spit out and then try again, and keep going, because it will bring you down. But those are such little things that we don't think about. I mean, a lot of people want a quick fix, and I get it. But if you can go and do a program like this, or get the opportunity to, and heal properly, and then learn techniques, the least you can do is at least pass on a few of those little handful of techniques that you learn, but hopefully can help bring somebody else down when they're having a panic attack, or they can feel themselves getting worked up.
Yeah. And that's great that these treatments are available. Unfortunately, I wish there was more available locally for you that didn't require you to come all that way to figure it out, but I'd
rather,
right?
It's fine. It's fine. I would rather come down to Texas. I love America. They're free.
There you go.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to go there, but you did.
It's fine. That's cool. Listen, I was on the Drinking Bros last week, and we were having a whole conversation about it. They brought me on specifically to talk about how we're communists. So it's fine. I've got no issue talking about it. But yeah, so it's nice to come down to places like Texas where I can have open conversation and dialogue and not feel like the crazy person in the room.
Right. Well, definitely not. I think you're on the right track there. So you also mentioned your podcast, the Brass and Unity podcast. I want to give you a chance to talk about that. What is that all about? And what can people expect when they check that out?
Oh God. So I started it about a year and a half ago now. Yeah, I think it'd be a year and a half now. And we just hit our 100th episode on Friday. Our first year we did one episode a week. And then this year we bumped it to 2 episodes a week, and it'll be bumped to 3 soon. But what the Brass and Unity podcast is talk to all walks of life, people, tier one special forces, actors, professional athletes, Fortune 500 CEOs, doctors, neurologists, all types of individuals. And I pull apart their life. I want to know how they got to where they are. I want to understand them in a way that they haven't really shared with others. I want them to be vulnerable and talk to me about real life issues that they've gone through with their mental health and with their life, and how they've been able to pull themselves out, progress, and get better. And I want them to share the tools that they've learned so that others that are listening can pick something up from it and hopefully put it and progress and integrate it into their lives so that they get something positive from it. And so we don't sit on there and rant about the news. We talk about, the realities of life and individual stories. And, we have conversations where sometimes we go on tangents about plenty of other things. Lego on one of them with a professional rower, for the Olympic rower from Britain. We ranted about Lego for a while. But, we talk about all different types of things. Sometimes the world bleeds into it a bit, and we have those types of conversations. But for the most part, it's individualized based on the guest. And we do episodes from an hour to 3 hours. And we started it, with the mindset of I wanted to do something different than just sell jewelry. I wanted people to understand why I do what I do, and it gave me an opportunity to do so. And we've been really fortunate, really, really fortunate with the show. We've had some great people on. We've had some great actors from Band of Brothers. We just had Alexander Ledwig on for our 100th episode from Vikings and Lone Survivor. We've had, people from the community. We've had Mike Glover on. We've had Andy Stump. We've had Brian Bishop. We've had Griff from Combat Flip Flop. So we have community members. We have gang member units from the RCMP police. We have Dean Stott. We have special forces from Britain. We have them from everywhere. So we kind of talk to as many different personalities as possible, people who feel like they have something to share. And that's kind of the show.
Yeah. And it sounds like your show and this show have a very similar mission in terms of sharing stories, telling people's sides of things and how they've progressed through stuff. And so I'm glad to have you on and be able to share that with my audience, because quite frankly, I don't care where people get the help that they're looking for. I don't care where they get the inspiration, whatever. So if you find it on the Brass and Unity podcast, awesome, cool. We've checked that box and we've helped somebody, right? And so go check out that podcast for the listeners. I really do encourage people to go check it out, subscribe. I'm assuming wherever you listen to podcasts that you can find that, right? Go check it out, subscribe to it, listen to a few of the episodes, and see if you can't find what you're looking for on that podcast as well. Really at the end of the day, we want to help people. Bottom line, I don't care where they find it. So, anyways, it's been a pleasure speaking with you today. I really enjoyed this conversation. I think it's been a lot of fun, and I'm sure we could probably go on for a few more hours if we let it go that far. But maybe we'll have to have you back on another time.
For sure, anytime.
Where can people go to support Brass and Unity and all the stuff that you guys are doing, and check out all the products that you have to offer?
Yeah, so you can go to brassandunity.com. We ship everywhere in the world. We have, if you're from Canada, we have retail locations with Canex, which is at our PXs. We sell at the Marine Corps Exchange, as well as you can get everything online. We also, we have the Instagram, which is Brass and Unity, and my Instagram is just Kelsi_Sheren. On there, we post a lot of different content, not just about the show, but just lifestyle and kind of what we're doing. We also have, if you sign up for the subscription list for the website, you get 30% off your first order. So that's always fun. And you can pretty much find anything on social media. We're around. We've done a few other podcasts. So if you're kind of looking to hear just more about me and who I am or the show, we have, you can take a look. We've got all those podcasts listed as well.
Awesome. Yeah. And I, just as an American here, for people who might be thinking about ordering something from Brass and Unity and worried about shipping times and things like that. So I bought something from Brass and Unity
Oh, you did?
Yes, I did. I actually got
The Quattro.
bracelet. Yes,
This
from
guy.
Brass and Unity. Yeah, exactly. And I ordered it on a Sunday, like late Sunday night, and I think it was in the mailbox on the Wednesday or maybe the Thursday or something like that. It was quick. So if you're worried about shipping times or anything like that, like customs or whatever, it was quick. I was actually surprised at how quick it was because I actually ordered it for a Mother's Day present, and and I was thinking, okay, I'll give it a few weeks to, just in case it gets hung up in customs or whatever. Nope, no, I'm good to go, and here we are. I still have it with plenty of time, so I was pretty psyched about that.
Yeah, just because we're Canadian doesn't mean we're that far. We live on the border, so we're real close, and we ship everything from here. So don't stress, we've got you covered.
Yeah, and it helps I'm on the West Coast, but even for the East Coast, it's not going to take that much longer. So, your shipping times are amazing. The product is great, and I really do encourage people to go check that out and support Brass and Unity as well. So I'll have links to everything, your social media, your website, the podcast, everything in the show notes. So anyone who wants to check it out, please check out the show notes and head on over to brassandunity.com and check out all the great products that they have to offer. Thanks again, Kelsi, for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Drive On Podcast. If you want to check out more episodes or learn more about the show, you can visit our website, driveonpodcast.com. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube at Drive On Podcast.